בעמוד התפילה יש צדיק בייז. We can't appreciate the weight, the seriousness of what's taking place. We don't have the tools. We're not big enough. We're not properly developed to contain the magnitude of each moment. And so in the beginning, in order to train ourselves, in order to grow into, in order to become, we designate times, we designate different occasions when there's more excitement, when there's more intention, when there's more presence. And then we stretch our capacity, we go deeper. And so we're trying to contain something. That something is real, that something is reality itself. We're trying to contain the magnitude of what is. And it's too much for us to contain. We can't carry the burden. The load, if we were to realize, would be unbearable. How can we interact with reality if we know how consequential every interaction is? Who can say that he's manifesting in such perfection that he's not violating anything in reality? So the time for that, the time for realizing the power of speech and the magnitude of speech, we designated that as the time of prayer. So in the time of prayer, we're going to pay attention to a simple fact, that what we say is the only way that life can be interpreted into these dimensions, where the interpretation of speech resides. The interpretation we give through speech is only created through speech and only through human speech, and that's the only way that that entire dimension exists. And that dimension is in charge of everything that takes place, because that dimension engraves within the soul the interpretation of reality, and therefore this is what's going to motivate the soul and how it's going to interact with reality. How will the soul manifest? It's going to first consult with the world of speech, and then it will manifest. And so when we're speaking, we're engraving in that place that engraves in the world of speech. And then everything comes forth from there. So when we're praying, we're tuning into this reality. It's always true, not only when we're praying. Everything that we're engraving in the world of speech is being engraved based on our intention and based on our desire. It's always true. But because at the time of prayer we're going to pretend that what's true is true, so that we can stretch our nerves, so that we can learn to take life seriously enough, so that we can interact with it as if we matter, because we do. So then in these times, we're going to say that our intention is that we're standing in front of the Creator and we're telling the Creator what to do. Because that's always the truth. The Creator is the power of the soul that resides within. The creation is the manifestation that we create in thought, in speech, and in action. And that manifestation of the Creator, of the source energy, is based on the world of speech, on how we interpreted reality. What was being said, what was being explained, That's how the Creator manifests into thoughts, into speech, and into action. That's the channel. That's the way. That's the only way. There's nothing else that interferes with the dimension of speech. There's no one else that can go in there. No angels. The angels are doing our service in the world of speech, but they cannot speak for themselves. They cannot contribute directly to the world of speech. Only through humanity can they contribute to the world of speech, if humanity chooses. And so he says in Ois Tzadik Beis, Hadibur shel Yisrael, hu olam hadibur, kiviyachol. The speech of Yisrael, that is the world of speech. That world of speech runs the world. That's the interpretation that the Creator is going to use in order to create. And based on that, everything shall be created. And based on that, everything will be experienced and felt. That's the cycle of life. That's the nature of the truth. This is the world that gives life to the world that we experience. This is the higher world than the world that we experience. Why is it higher? Because it's the cause. And the experience is the effect. And so the cause is the higher world, the world of speech, and the effect is the lower world, the world of experience. And so that's the Olam HaDibur that gives life to the world. Imachshavton shel Yisrael, the thought that we create. Hu Olam HaMachshava, that's the world of thought. How's the speech going to be formed? Well, let's have a look in the world of thought. What are they thinking? What do they believe? What do they think they want? Then we can quickly do the math, and we can see if from those thoughts will come good speech or bad speech. Will come relief or frustration. What type of speech will result from those thoughts? And so the world of thought, who's in charge of it? We are in charge of it. The rules were designed by the master, but who is creating the content? We are creating the content. And that's the channel that creates life. That's how life gets created, based on thought, based on speech. So machshavtan shel Yisrael, that's the world of machshava. Ba'olam hazeh mekabel oisis hadibur derech emtzois hamidas. The world that we experience receives the letters of speech through the emotions. Who decides what we are going to speak? Our feelings decide. The midas decide what we are going to speak. And so the world of thought is the source, is the ocean of the potential of speech. And based on how we feel, we're going to manifest that thought into a speech. The emotion is going to decide how the speech comes from those thoughts. What are we going to pull from the vast ocean of potential and possibility? So many thoughts, but what are we going to say? And so he says, this world, the one that we're experiencing, receives the letters of speech through the channel of the attributes. And what are the attributes? What are the basic set of attributes? Chesed, Din, Rachamim. Right, left, and center. When the attribute goes to the right, it's expanding, it wants to connect, it feels safe, it's going towards unity. And on the left, when the attribute is contracting and there's less, and there's resistance, and there's separation. And Rachamim is compassion. Rachamim is how do you use these two extremes in order to help the situation at hand? which of the extremes, or somewhere in the middle, is going to be the most helpful to the situation at hand. That's rachamim. That's called tiferes. That's called the midas ha'emes. That's the Torah. The Torah is rachamim. The Torah means this is the situation. What's the best we can do with it? By Matan Torah it was one best. After the Egel it was a different best. After the Meraglim it was another best. The Torah will go there because that's rachamim. Rachamim means hang on, but there's a soul that's trapped in the entire situation. Don't give me ideals. How do you save this soul? That's rachamim. How do you use everything that you know and apply it to the situation at hand so that the soul can receive the best result? It's not about the ideals, it's about the soul. The ideals are to teach and to train the soul, not to destroy the soul. And so that's the Torah, and the Torah is every generation different. The Rachamim is every generation different. Chesed and Din are the extremes. They're prototypes. But Rachamim is beyond the prototype. Rachamim is a live reaction to reality. It's called the Kava Emtsoi, the middle line. That's where reality resides. So Chesed Din ורחמים, לפי שהעולם הזה יש בשטח גבול, צריך לקבלה על ידי המידס. So everything that exists within time and space means that it's under the rulership of the attributes. Why is it under the rulership of the attributes? How do we know? Because how else would it get a size? How else would it get a duration? There has to be an attribute that says, this is how big it's going to be, and this is how long it's going to exist. Those are attributes that are limiting it. If this being was beyond the attributes, if it could receive directly from the infinite beyond attributes, it wouldn't have a space and a time. There are plenty of beings like that. They don't have a space and a time. Why? Because they're not under the attributes, they're above the attributes. The attributes receive from them. And so they're above space and time, and through the attributes, they create within space and time. The attributes give the ability for the infinite to dress up in a specific form. Like we see in the soul, the human soul, it has infinite potential. But because of its attributes, it doesn't have access to its infinite potential. When a person is angry, even though in his potential is to love and to feel kind and grateful, in those moments he loses access to his potential because the attributes are now limiting him to one form of manifestation. And so now he's limited in how he can manifest his infinite potential. And so this is how the attributes operate on our soul. And then in the collective, in the force that creates all, the attributes are the ones that decide the limitations of things, the duration of things, the size of things. And we're not allowed to question his attributes. Not allowed means it's not healthy for our biology. It will destroy us. Because there's no end to it. We're not in a situation that's comfortable. And the one that designed and the one that created says, this is the way that it's supposed to work. You need to figure it out. And so naturally, we're going to want to object to his attributes and say that he didn't measure right. Something in the way that he created is wrong. And if we go down that road, then we've lost it. We've lost him, we've lost ourselves. We've lost the ability to ever make sense of what's happening to us. We've lost the ability to ever love it enough to be able to do it right. And so that's why it says, we're not allowed to question his attributes. We're supposed to try and understand what it is that he designed, because that's the ultimate good, that's the ultimate kindness. And we are here to learn that, and that's the ultimate good, and that's the ultimate kindness. If the world bowed to our interpretations of good and kind, then it would be better not to be here. The only reason it's worth going through what we're going through is because we're doing it for what he believes is good and kind, and that certainly will justify every effort. And so we have to trust that the one who designed our brains understood at least as much as our brains can understand. And so therefore, we're not to question what he designed, we're to question, how do I comply with it? That's the question. How do I completely surrender to his design and only comply with it, and never fail, and never forget, and never have any desire to go against? And that cannot happen if we're Maharer Chaim Yosef. If we think that his attributes are unfair, then we're hurting ourselves. We're hurting our soul. Our soul doesn't appreciate thinking that way. Because then what does it have? Who can it lean on? Where will it turn to? The soul knows that it doesn't want to be right and get destroyed. It would rather be wrong and everything will be safe. And so, if the soul is wrong and the Creator is right, then we're all safe. If the soul is right, that the Creator is wrong, then the soul gained nothing. It just destroyed the whole platform where it could have potentially found safety. And so it's not within the interest of the soul. It's not within its desire to realize something that's the opposite of its eternal safety, its eternal destiny. It loses all its purpose, it loses all its power. And so if we think the attributes of the Creator are wrong, we're basically removing ourselves from life. And then the consequences are visible, also in the person's life, in their behavior, in their speech, and even on their face. Because they're no longer aligned, they're no longer fully committed, they're no longer invested in reality the way that we must be if we are to do it right. They're questioning it. They're standing on the sidelines. Life doesn't have a sidelines. We're always right in the middle. There's nowhere to stand in order to observe and see what happens and just give your own criticism of what should have been. It's not a real place. It doesn't really exist. The only place that exists is when we're fully committed and we're giving ourselves over completely. Then we're trying to gain existence, assuming that we have the right equipment to do it. But if we're questioning, if we're standing aside, if we're wait and see, then we're entirely not here. We're entirely not involved. The Olam HaMachshava is being corrupted by things that are foreign to the true nature of our hearts.
The nature of the heart is the compass that will indicate to the organism if it's perceiving from Tiferet. The heart is open. Mm-hmm. We're saying, like, if the organism has equipment, mm-hmm. that is the heart, and the organs, and the sum total of them, if they're working in harmony. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If we can listen to the design, then we can return to prophecy. And if that wasn't possible, then it just wouldn't be possible. Because certainly no one is going to come and teach it to us today. No one knows it. No one has known it for many generations. And so the place that it's hidden is inside the heart. It's inside our nature. If we can release the one that is imprisoned in our heart, he will tell us all the secrets. He knows everything. He knows how to give life to a human organism. He's very powerful, very wise. And so therefore he says, לפי שהעולם הזה יש בשטח גבול, if there's a limitation to its size and to its shape, צריך לקבל על ידי המידס, he has to receive that from the attributes. כמו של השמש, שאין יכול להסתכל במחמס גודל הבהיר שבו. ואור העצם אין יכול להסתכל בו. So the sun itself is a light that we might call, relatively speaking, that's beyond attributes. Why? Because it's such a powerful light that nobody has the capacity to carry that light, to interact with that light in a way that they feel equal to it. And so that's a light without attributes. But then when it comes through a window, then it already received from the attributes, therefore we can interact with it. Therefore it was limited. And it wasn't in its original state, in its original power. And then we can taste the nature of it. Then we can come closer. And so he says, you can look at the light coming from the sun, and then you can perceive it and enjoy it. The reason you can enjoy it is because it's so small. It's because it came down, because it's been released from its original state. And then we can interact with it. So when we have the interaction with life in this world, under space and time, we don't have the capacity to interact with the light beyond space and time. Our mind cannot go there. We're boggled by the concept because the equipment that we have cannot go there. We're not equipped to handle that type of light. We can only handle the light that has been restricted by the attributes. So there's this concept of V'saneg al Hashem, V'kafticha al bam se'aretz, that the person could go beyond the midas. The person could go to the light that's before the midas, and then he receives from a place that is higher than the conditionality of chesed, din, and rachamim, the columns that are constantly pulling in different directions. Then a person is beyond judgment. Al kapayim yiseincha is beyond the kapayim. What are the kapayim? Kaf schus and kaf choiva. So it says, Al kapayim yiseincha, pentigav be'even raglecha. The even is the even michshel, that everybody falls over this even. Everybody's tripping over the same even. And that even is the nature of the physical. We are spiritual beings, and we all trip over the nature of the physical. It confuses us. It takes away our power. It makes us feel limited. It makes us feel like we're from the physical world because we're dressed in the physical. We don't realize the distinction between the one who's thinking and what he's seeing, what he's feeling. That's already an extension. That's not the thing itself. And so this even is what causes everybody to fall, because then they see themselves as something that they're not. They start imagining themselves as a physical object. And then once they imagine themselves that way, they fall under the kapayim. They start falling into kaf schus and kaf choiva. And if you start falling into kaf schus and kaf choiva, before very long you're in kaf choiva. Because in the physical world, we're limited with our intelligence. And as we said before, who is going to face reality and say, I understood it, I know what I'm doing, I understand the magnitude and the consequences of what's taking place? And since nobody can say that, if we forget that we are a soul, then we feel that we are the body, that we are a physical being that is judging itself based on actions, based on things that are coming out of it, not it itself. It is not being seen, and only things coming out of it are being seen. And based on that, it's falling into kaf choiva. What's coming out of it is not good enough. And it takes that to mean it is not good enough. Because it's not seeing it. It's seeing a body that's performing actions. And so it takes the sum total of the actions, does a quick arithmetic, and then we're in the kapayim. And so it says, Al kapayim yiseincho, pentigo be'even raglecho. Your hergel is going to make you fall over the Evan. And so if I'm going to judge you based on kapayim, you're going to trip up and think that you're the baddest person that ever existed. And so therefore, if I want to protect you, if you want to be B'tzel Shaddai, I have to take you beyond the kapayim, to a place where there are no kapayim. And this is based on knowing the name. Knowing the name. Asagvei ki yoda shmi. Ki yoda shmi, it goes beyond the kapayim. And so the same, just like we judge the soul based on little moments of inspiration that resulted in action, and then we think that we have an idea who this thing is. And so the same way we judge the Creator based on little fragments of light that we can see that has become the reality that we experience. That doesn't represent the Creator. That doesn't represent His potential. That doesn't represent the power that He has. It's simply the bite size that we were ready to absorb, that based on our equipment we can translate. That's the level of intelligence we have to interact with Him. It tells us nothing about Him. But out of His kindness, He created a formula where on each level of perception, we can see that formula. We can get to know the formula that is Him. We can get to know the signature that is Him. We can get to know the Tzelem Elohim, that everywhere we go, on all the levels of perception, from any perspective that we will see life, always will we find that formula is there. It's the formula of the truth. Chesoma shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu emes. And emes is the Lamed Beis Nesivos, the 32 lanes of creation. And those come together to create the Eitz Chaim, the tree of life, and that represents the life force that dwells within our heart and dwells within our organs and gives life to everything that's alive. And so these are rays. Everything is a ray of the bigger light that we can't interact with because it's so big. Our tools can't handle interacting with that light. And so they interact according to their level. They interact according to the size that they can handle. If you see the big light, like in the sun, then you can't interact with it and you can't perceive it. And that's a bigger destruction. It's like Shlomo Melech says, Al ti tzadik harbe, v'al tischakem yoser lama tishoimim. Don't try to be overly righteous and overly wise, because it will destroy you. Why will being overly righteous or overly wise destroy you? Shouldn't it build you? But building you is wisdom according to your level. It's according to what you can translate into real meaning. That's wisdom. But if you see light that's beyond your capacity, then you cannot conform with that level of understanding. You cannot comply with that level of light. And therefore it's called shmama. It's called to go into the wilderness. The wilderness means that there's no meaning anymore. There's no real motivation on that, from that perspective, because the vessel cannot handle such a high level of interpretation. And so the light has to be suitable to the vessel, to the level of where the vessel is. And the brain is amazing at interpreting information in that way. So that a brain that has lesser development, it will take the same information and it will cause it to mean something according to its level. And so this is how we use words. We're using words, even though words mean different things to all of us. And yet we're pushing the buttons and the computer is coming up with results, and then we're having an experience. And that's the way it was designed to be. That's the intention. And so the light that is infinite dresses up in all these different shades, in all these different layers, and everything in order to be available for all the levels according to their development. וזהו כי שמש ימוגן הווי אלוהים. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is called a sun and a protector. A sun meaning that he shines to all, and everyone receives his rays based on their level of development, based on how much they have realized. Ois Tzadik Gimel. כאשר האדם הוא מדבר באהבה ויראה, עלי השכינה משתקקת לדברים אלו, כמו האם המשתקקת שידבר בנו דובר של שכל, כדי שתחושב בעיני בעלו. So when a person speaks and there's attributes within his speech, there's emotion within his speech, there is a real interaction with reality within his speech, so then the Shekhinah is desiring, she yearns for those words. It's like food to her soul. Finally, someone who is speaking from a place of truth so that I can feel myself and know myself accurately. Oh, I've been waiting for thousands of years. And so the Shekhinah is mishtakekes, she's thirsty to hear words that bring her closer to her husband. Who is her husband? The attributes that run life. She wants to receive from the attributes, because if we had all the right attributes, the Shekhinah would receive tremendous shefa. She would receive billions-fold compared to what she's receiving now, while our speech, our attributes are drying her up, are taking away her power, are taking away her desire. And so she's not receiving from her husband because of us. That's the nature of things, how it really is. This isn't just metaphoric. This is something that righteous people would wake up in the middle of the night and cry about this every single night. And they weren't just crocodile tears. These were cryings that were heart-wrenching to listen to. It was hearing a human being that's tapping into a pain that's greater than billions of human lives. And that pain is real. That pain is still taking place. And she yearns. She really waits for the moment when she's going to be liberated. To her, it's real. To some of us, we think it's a story. It's no story to her. She's carrying the burden every single day. She's carrying all the hospitals. All the people in the hospitals, she is giving them life while they're in the condition they're in, and she's feeling what they're feeling. Every single one. And she's waiting for the day when humanity is going to say that we've suffered enough, that we care about each other and ourselves, that we want to do it differently. And so when someone feels, he's feeling for her. The weight of reality is tremendous. We can't feel it, but we can feel a little, and then what? Our attributes will create speech that is appropriate to the situation. Not some other joke, not some other distraction, but to say something that's real and to feel it while we're saying it, so that the Shekhinah can awaken, so that the truth can awaken within us. And so when he speaks, the Shekhinah awaits, just like a mother wants to see her son say wisdom in front of her husband because she wants her husband to love her more. She wants to feel closer to her husband. So if their son is wise, she is proud. Look what we've created together. Look at us. That's how the Shekhinah looks to the Creator, looks to the attributes that create life and says, look at us, what we've created. If the attributes can motivate the soul, which represents the Shekhinah, to say the right words, the Shekhinah is proud. Look at what we've created together. It's working. So כך כשהדיבורים באים למעלה מכוח האדם מקושטים, בזה הכוח נולד הספרס גודל. When the words come from beyond the power of a human being, and they come in jewelry, meaning that they have excitement, they have attributes, there's precious stones within those words. There are revelations of truth. And so when those words come, there's a tremendous pride in the higher realms. That's when the angels give praise to the Creator. Oh wow, look at your creation. You did know what you were doing after all. Because the angels don't get to sing unless the project is successful. The angels are like the employees that are part of the project. They're helping create, they're helping build. And then they cannot celebrate unless the project is successful. That's when the owner wants to celebrate with them. So the angels are waiting to celebrate, but they can only celebrate when humanity gets their act together. Otherwise, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, my handiwork is suffering down there. They're in the frying pan and you're singing. What's there to sing about? They need relief. They need intelligence. They need to feel what's taking place so that they can know how to react. So it causes a tremendous pride to awaken within the collective soul. And the angels are giving praise. It's better that he should say at least one word in every prayer with some emotion. Whatever the heart feels at the moment. Don't tell the heart how to feel. Express what it's already feeling. Too many people come into shul trying to tell the heart what to feel. That's not how a heart works. The mouth goes after the heart, not the heart after the mouth. The heart feels something, the mouth expresses that and just that. Then the mouth is serving the heart. The mouth works for the heart. The mouth is only meant to say what's in the heart, nothing else. Everything else is corrupting the soul. It's either lying to it, or distracting it, or confusing it, or just wasting its time. None of them good options. But when the mouth speaks what's in the heart, then all the worlds start to heal. All the worlds are waiting that the human heart should heal, because the human heart is where the king desired that the management of the cosmos should take place. And so management is drunk, and everything is suffering. Nothing is going right. Even management knows things are not going right. That's how bad it is already. There's been no checks, no bonuses, no nothing. And that's because the owner disagrees with management. Management needs to wake up. And then the owner will release his infinite glory. And then we'll know. Then we'll remember. There will be no questions then. When everything feels right, there are no questions. Questions start when things don't feel right. So if you say a word, V'hava v'yira, v'zeh mo'eres shekol ha'malachim ha'mashir l'kadosh baruch hu. He's waking up all the angels. Everybody's happy that finally this project worked. He does feel. Humans are sensitive. Oh, wow. They can do it. Go humans. They can actually feel. After thousands of years of killing each other, they can still feel. That's amazing. We grow back like trees. It's been tough. It's been a long winter. But here summer comes and there's a new bloom. We can do it all over again. וגם הוא מאיר כל העולמות. He's waking up all the worlds. שכשהוא עובד לקדוש ברוך הוא, he's serving the great purpose. כל העולמות אוהב נס יזבח שמוי. All the worlds are surrendering to the sweetness of the truth. Oh, that's what we meant. That's what we were waiting for. That's what was wrong. Wow, you're so right. Oh my God. All the worlds. The human being has a representation of all the worlds. We're very complex. To be simple, to be just quiet, takes a tremendous process. And that's because the life force goes through all the worlds. But from when it leaves the original source until it gets to our perception, it runs through all the worlds, literally. And it happens in less than a split second. And it's happening every less than a split second. That's how life gets distributed. היוצר יחד ליבם. המאבן על כל מעשיהם. From the infinite, all the worlds, and the thought. From the infinite, through all the worlds, and the word. The process is so continuous, so perfect, so flawless, that we can even deny it exists. That's what we've been doing conveniently for a very long time. But at the end, the result of this convenience is very inconvenient. At the end, what manifests to a channel that's not aware that it's a channel causes a lot of damage, especially to that channel, because it's all alive, it's all real. It's all spiritual products that we're downloading over here. And then we have those products within us. We have the spirits, we have the experiences, we have the memories, we have the scars. Everything remains. Whatever we download, we are. That's how we've chosen to get dressed, while we had the ability to dress in an infinite amount of ways. There's no limit to how we can dress, to what it can mean, to what it could be. There's no limit. And this is what we chose to do with that no limit. And so when we serve with this process, when whatever manifests through us is aligned with the will that created us, then all the worlds surrender, because they had to surrender for that moment in order for that thought to come through from the infinite, exactly as he wills it, through all the worlds, and still as he wills it within the perception of man. That requires the cooperation of all the worlds, literally. If any of the worlds would have interfered, if any demon would have been in that process, and the thought would no longer be exactly as it was intended, something else would come out. And so by surrendering and being able to attach to the root, all the worlds surrender. Everybody is in agreement. The unity manifests through that channel. So Moshe Rabbeinu was able to bring Klal Yisrael to Har Sinai, Ish Echad B'Lev Echad, and then this process was revealed. It was clear to everyone. They saw it, they understood it. And they couldn't carry the burden of knowing that. It was so real, it was so intense. They didn't know how to live with that. That's the seriousness of what's taking place. It's so real. Once it's going to be revealed what it is, then we're going to know that the whole time it was that. It was never anything else. Whatever it is we thought didn't really matter. It was never anything else. It was that the whole time. And we didn't know it was that. And we were playing with it as if it's something else. And so then it's very real. The burden is great. This is the burden all we're afraid of. This is why I have a Torah, to help us relieve that burden, to help us be yotzi yedei choiv, to come out of the kaf choiv, to have a bare minimum where we say, well, at least we tried, at least we meant it, at least we gave it all we had. It's a very big deal. That's the main thing that fell when we said that there was a Yeridus Adoris, that the generations have been deteriorating. What does it mean the generations have been deteriorating? In the essence of things. Can we say that they knew how to respect the human being? That they understood how to interact with each other? That probably not. Probably not. Doesn't look that way. But what we fell in, what we lost, is that they knew that things are serious over here. We don't understand how serious things are anymore. Every generation understands a little bit less how serious things are over here. And so they have a little bit less of themselves to give. Because we're biological. If we don't think it's serious, okay, we'll get less. You're not going to get the same thing and then have it easier. No, your biology is going to go based on your expectation. Oh, you don't need, you won't get. We think in terms of interacting with humans. We're negotiating. Oh, if I'll make it easier, then it'll be easier. No, that's not how a body works. A body reacts to your expectation. You take life seriously, oh, you will get a lot of energy to interact with life. You don't take life seriously, you're not going to have energy. From where? What's creating the energy? What biological process is pushing you? You don't think it even matters. And so in those lives, there will be a fear that might be driving the production, that might be pushing. And many people, the fear of financial ruin is what's driving them every day to continue. If that fear was not there, we would discover a whole different person that we haven't yet seen. Or it could be a desire for something. He wants that house. He's going to put in whatever it takes until he gets that house. Maybe there's also a fear behind that. But even if there isn't, it's not his soul that's driving. His soul is not part of the conversation. It's something external that's driving. And so this is related to the accuracy, understanding the sources of the things that are driving us, and how we can align with the root, how we can align with the real cause that's making us be, there's that part of us that is for sure going to have this conversation with us about how we were to him while this was taking place. There's no doubt that that conversation is going to take place in some format. It could be instantaneous for the entire lifetime. It could be different moments of like, really? Were you just going to leave me hanging like that? But this conversation for sure is going to take place. There's a blind being in here that's relying on our mind and our decisions and what we think is right. And we're certainly not aligned with it. Absolutely, 100%. And so for sure there will be a conversation about, hey, it wasn't exactly the way you thought. Didn't you realize? This conversation has to come because of the nature of things. This conversation is already happening. We're just not listening to it. The heart's reacting. The heart's always reacting. And it's mostly reacting to what we're doing, to what we're telling it, to how we're interpreting the situation. And this is where childhood patterns become an issue, because if we keep interpreting the same way that's already offensive to the heart, then we're just creating a deeper and deeper wound. Because to the heart, what we tell it is reality. It cannot distinguish. It's a biological process. There's no distinction between what we're imagining and what's real. The heart believes us either way. Let's Tzadik Dalet. Yishma me'echol ekoili. Heichel nikra dibur. That when we're going into the palace of the king, then you're going into the world of concept, going into the world of words, going into the root from where everything came forth. Everything was a concept before it became a thing. And so the world of concept runs the world of things. And when we go to the concepts, we're closer to the root than when we're the things. And so the dibur is called the heichel. וצריך לספל רק בשביל שיוביס הדיבר לא יסברך שמוי. She is bringing the dibur back to the source that creates the dibur. He's bringing the dibur to the king. He's giving the palace to its rightful owner. He doesn't take ownership of the palace. The palace belongs to the owner. He is in the palace, and he remembers whose palace it is. And so he remembers the dibur, that the dibur is the heichel, and he brings back the speech to its root. If he prays with this intention, then all the obstacles get out of his way. It's like all the guards have to respect him. Why? Because he's working for the king. He's working for the owner of the palace. If he walks into the palace on his own business, the guards will throw him out. If he walks into the palace because he's working for the king, the guards have no choice. They have to let him through. So the guards in this case are the thoughts, the distractions, the other things that we want to think about. And all of them are trying to push their way into the dibur and into the machshava. And if the person doesn't have the right intentions, they might succeed. But when the person has the right intention, and the intention is that he's giving the speech back to the owner, then all his thoughts, all his personal conditioning just falls aside because it doesn't have that same level of importance. So derech Moshe chosim hamelech shenoisos ben kfar. You have someone who is from a lower level of existence, that comes from places where he doesn't really belong in the palace. And yet, if he comes to the palace and he has the stamp of the king, then everybody has to let him through. It doesn't matter who he is. The king says. And so the same would be for one who has the right intention when he speaks. So he says, the Ben Kfar she'ein organ lo b'fnei melech af al pi kein manichan oisei kol hamishmeres. Everybody has to let him in. Shemelech yesh lo ga'aguim el hachosim. The melech misses his stamp, meaning that the melech has a relationship with this man that we need to respect. And so everybody lets him in and brings him quickly to the king. Kedei sheyeh lamelech taneg maher, that the king should enjoy himself quickly. So when there's the right words coming from a man, the angels are all excited to present it for the king. We see this even in Mitzrayim. In Mitzrayim, the Mitzrayim are not particularly kind people or sensitive in the sense that they want to do good to everyone. But when it comes to their king, as soon as they saw Sarah, they saw a beautiful woman, Vayhalalu ois el pare, they said, this belongs to a king. And so right away, everybody understood that this one they want to send to the king so that the king can have his pleasure. Because when the king has his pleasure, the whole nation feels better. Then everybody can have their needs. Then everybody's taken care of. If the king is suffering, then the nation is being neglected. There's no one that should care. There's no one that should understand their needs. No one should have the sensitivity to know what the people really need. And so this depends a lot on the state of health and the state of enjoyment of the king. And so they see Sarah, they say, this one must go to Paro immediately. So the same goes for the melech that has gagum to the chosim, meaning that these words are words that the melech would like to hear. The angels cannot interfere with these words because everyone wants the king to be happy with his world. Then he will give more life to his world. Then the angels will get more. So kacha Kadosh Baruch Hu megagea achar hadibur. Kadosh Baruch Hu has gaguim. He misses these words. V'zeh yishma ma'echol lekoili d'haina machmas hadibur. He should hear me from his hall, from his wherever he is located, which is within the world of dibur. He should hear me from there, as I call out his name, and I call to the source of the speech. I call to the intelligence that designs, that allows for, that creates, that organizes, that intelligence that's involved in the creation of all the worlds, that intelligence that's measuring, according to the attributes, the life force for each individual, for each organ, for each limb, for each animal, for each tree, for each grass, for each leaf. And so that same one is the one that's forming the words, giving them shape, giving them depth, giving them meaning. To him we call, Yishma Meichol Koidi. Adkan.